All right, the design intent on this problem is to draw a rib going between these two cylinders. Now if we examine where the cylinders are at, we'll turn on the visibility of the origin. We see that the origin is down here, so the two cylinders are not located relative to the origin, so we have to find some way of getting that rib in here that might be more complex than what we would normally experience. If we examine, though, we see that the two cylinders are on the XY plane. So let's do a new sketch on that XY plane. And then I'm going to project geometry. I prefer to manually project the edges that I want rather than have Inventor auto project them. And then I'm going to do a 3-point rectangle, and I'll just put this rectangle out here in space someplace. And then I want to put a midpoint constraint between the midpoint of this line and the center of this circle, and the same way at the other end between the midpoint of this line and the center of this circle. I'll then dimension this so that it will be fully constrained, and so I only need one dimension to fully constrain that rectangle, and it's done. Now if we were in Inventor 2020, we would be done with the sketch, but let's see what happens in 2018. So I'm running Inventor 2018. If I try to select that rectangle, I can't get the area minus this circle and this circle. Now in 2020, we would be done. We would just pick that, and it would get the correct area. So I'm going to have to do a little bit of extra work in 2018. So I'm going to do split. And I'm going to split this line at this end, and I'll also split it at this end. I'll split this line here, and I'll split this line at this end. Now when I do the extrude, it's still trying to pick the entire area. There I happen to, it is getting the correct area, but sometimes you'll still have trouble. If you have trouble getting the correct area, just right click and do select other, and you can get the profile that you wanted. I'll do that at join 0.125. And so I've created my rib. Let's look at another way of doing that. So I'm going to undo back to where I put those points in, and so go forward. So I don't have the points in here now. I mean, I don't have the split. So I did split. This time I'm going to put sketch points in here. So I'll put a sketch point at each one of those 4 locations. And now if I do the extrude, again I can select other if it doesn't get it automatically, and I can get the profile that I want. I'll put it on join 0.125, and so that was another way of doing it. Let's look at another way. So I'll do a new sketch on the XY plane, and I'm going to project geometry, this circle and this circle. I will then draw a line between those two circles from here to here. Again, I'm going to split that line, so I'll do split at this end, I'll do split at this end. Now notice when I did that it's no longer fully constrained, so I'm going to do a collinear between here and here, collinear between here and here. I want to change the geometry at this end to construction, and I want to change this geometry to construction, and then I'm going to do extrude, and this time I'm going to extrude as a surface body, and I'll put in the 0.125 distance, and then I will thicken that the 0.08 in mid plane. Once I have thickened that, I'll turn off the visibility of the surface body. And so there we see another way of doing it. Let's look at another way. I'm going to do an axis here, spacebar, another axis. I'll do a plane between those two axes. And then I'll do a new sketch on that plane, and I'm going to project cut edges. I could do project geometry. I'll project cut edges. And I'm going to draw a rectangle then from, let's do it from here over to here, and I'll dimension that height 0.125. And then I will do my extrusion, and I want to do that mid-plane 0.08, and so here we see another way of easily creating that rib. We could also draw a line and use the rib feature. That would be a little bit more work because we have the holes in here. Generally you add the holes later in the design, but the rib feature can be done. It's not too much difficult to do the rib either. Let's look at in 2020. So here is the file opened up in 2020, and again I'll do a new sketch on the XY plane, and I will then project geometry, this circle and this circle, just like we did previously, and I'll do my 3-point rectangle. I'll put it out in space, and then I'll do a coincident constraint between the midpoint of this line and this point, and between the midpoint of this line and this point. I will then dimension that distance as 0.08, and I'll do my extrude, and I'll select that area, and I'll tell it that I want to go 0.125, and I want it to join to my existing geometry. And so the profile selection in 2020 has been dramatically improved.